November arrived quietly in Wyoming. The mountains were covered with fresh snow. The air was cold and sharp. Frost covered the grass every morning, turning the valleys white before the sun slowly melted it away. For most people, it was just another hunting season. Hundreds of hunters had traveled across the state. Some camped deep in the forests. Others stayed in cabins near the mountains. Pickup trucks filled dirt roads. Campfires glowed at night. It was one of the busiest hunting seasons in years. Among those hunters was Ethan Walker. He was 34 years old and had spent most of his life hunting in Wyoming. He knew every trail, every valley, and every mountain ridge for miles around. That morning, Ethan woke before sunrise. The world outside his tent was silent. He grabbed his rifle and stepped into the freezing air. The sky above was still dark blue. Stars covered the horizon. Everything seemed normal, but something felt strange. He couldn't explain why. The forest was too quiet. Usually, birds would already be moving through the trees. Usually, deer could be seen crossing the open fields. Today there was nothing. No birds. No animals. No sound. Only silence. Ethan frowned. His breath formed small clouds in front of him. "That's odd," he whispered. Several miles away, other hunters noticed the same thing. Animals had disappeared. Even the wind seemed weaker than normal. Nobody understood why. Then, shortly after sunrise, strange things began happening. At first, it was small. A hunter named Carl was driving his truck along a dirt road when his radio suddenly stopped working. The music vanished. Only static remained. Carl tapped the radio. Nothing. A few seconds later, the truck's GPS screen went black. "What the hell?" he muttered. Elsewhere, hunters checked their phones. No signal. No internet. Nothing. Some thought a storm was coming. Others blamed the cold weather. Nobody worried too much. Not yet. Around 9 in the morning, Ethan climbed a rocky ridge overlooking a wide valley. The view was beautiful. Snow-covered hills stretched for miles. The morning sun painted everything gold. Then he noticed something strange in the sky. A light. At first, it looked like a star. But stars were not supposed to be visible in daylight. Ethan narrowed his eyes. The light was moving, slowly, silently. Then another appeared, and another, and another. Soon there were dozens, small glowing lights drifting high above the clouds. Ethan lowered his binoculars. "What are those?" He wasn't the only one asking. Across Wyoming, thousands of people looked upward. The lights continued moving. Then suddenly they stopped, every single one, as if frozen in place. The strange sight made people uneasy. Even experienced hunters felt nervous. Something wasn't right. Far above Earth, hidden beyond the clouds, another group watched the planet. Inside a massive alien vessel, Commander Zorvok stood before a giant display screen. The screen showed Wyoming below. The alien commander was nearly 8 feet tall. His gray armor covered most of his body. His glowing yellow eyes studied the planet carefully. "This is a landing zone?" he asked. A smaller alien nodded. "Yes, Commander." The display highlighted the state. Population density is low. Military presence is minimal. Another officer stepped forward. "Our scans show thousands of armed life forms." Zorvok tilted his head. "Military?" The officer shook his head. "No, primitive civilians." The room filled with quiet laughter. Primitive civilians were not considered a threat. According to alien records, Earth was technologically weak. Its people used chemical weapons, gasoline engines, and primitive computers. Conquering the planet should be easy. "Begin Phase 1, Zorvok ordered. The officers immediately obeyed. Deep inside the enormous ship, engines awakened. Massive systems powered on. Energy flowed through the vessel. The invasion had begun. Back on Earth, Ethan felt the ground vibrate beneath his boots. At first, it was weak, then stronger. Snow slid from nearby rocks. The vibration grew worse every second. "What now?" Ethan said. Suddenly, a loud gas escaped his mouth. The sky above him changed. The cloud began moving apart. Not naturally. Something was pushing them aside. A gigantic shadow appeared overhead. Ethan froze. His rifle nearly slipped from his hands. Above the valley hung an object unlike anything he had ever seen. It was enormous, far bigger than any aircraft, far bigger than any building. The dark, circular structure seemed to stretch across the sky. Lights covered its surface. Metal plates reflected sunlight. The giant object floated silently above the mountains. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. People simply stared. It was impossible. It couldn't be real. Yet it was. Across Wyoming, thousands of hunters watched the same thing. Some dropped their equipment. Others grabbed binoculars. A few began recording videos. No one understood what they were seeing. Inside the alien mothership, Commander Zorvok smiled. The fear shown on human faces matched his expectations. Everything was proceeding perfectly. "Prepare landing units," he commanded. "Yes, Commander." Moments later, the bottom of the giant ship opened. Huge doors slowly separated. Bright orange light burst from within. The mountains below glowed beneath the strange energy. Ethan shielded his eyes. The light grew brighter and brighter. Then something emerged. At first, it looked like falling shadows. Then the shapes became clear. Machines. Gigantic machines. Each one stood nearly 40 feet tall. Metal legs touched the ground. Clouds of steam exploded around them. The machines marched forward through smoke and snow. More followed behind. Then more and more. An entire army was descending from the sky. Ethan's heart pounded. For the first time in his life, he felt true fear. The giant machines spread across the hilltops. Their glowing eyes scanned the landscape. The invasion had begun. Nearby, 3 hunters stood beside their trucks, staring at the impossible scene. One of them finally broke the silence. He adjusted his hunting cap and looked through his scope. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then he slowly lowered the rifle. "Well," he said. The other hunters looked at him. The man shook his head. "Those are the ugliest elk I've ever seen." For one brief moment, nobody said anything. Then all 3 burst out laughing. Far away, hidden inside the alien mothership, Commander Zorvok watched the humans through surveillance drones. He expected panic. He expected screaming. He expected surrender. Instead, the humans were laughing. The alien commander frowned. Something about these creatures suddenly felt very different from the reports. And deep in the forest of Wyoming, thousands of hunters quietly picked up their rifles and began moving toward the landing site. The aliens thought they had arrived in the easiest place on Earth. They had no idea they had just landed in the middle of hunting season. The first alien machines marched out of the smoke. Their metal legs crushed snow and small trees beneath them. Orange lights glowed from their bodies. Strange symbols flashed across their armor. The valley that had been peaceful only minutes earlier now looked like a battlefield. Ethan Walker watched from behind a rocky ridge. His heart was still racing. Every instinct told him to run. But another part of him wanted answers. "What are those things?" he whispered. No one had an answer. Across Wyoming, thousands of hunters stared at the same impossible sight. The giant ship remained in the sky. Smaller craft continued descending from it. The invasion was growing larger every minute. Inside the alien mothership, Commander Zorvok studied the latest reports. Everything appeared normal. Landing zones were secure. Ground forces were deploying successfully. No significant resistance had been detected. According to their data, the humans were frightened and confused, exactly as expected. "Proceed with civilian collection operations," Zorvok ordered. Several officers nodded. The plan was simple. Capture local humans. Study them. Establish control. Then expand across the continent. Earth would belong to the Galactic Dominion within weeks. At least that was the plan. Down below, things were already going wrong. Near the edge of the forest, an alien patrol moved through the snow. 6 soldiers advanced carefully. Their scanners searched for nearby life forms. Suddenly, one scanner beeped. "Human detected." An alien soldier reported. The squad leader nodded. "Capture alive." The patrol followed the signal. A few moments later, they spotted their target. An older man wearing orange hunting gear. He stood beside a small campfire. The human appeared alone. The alien smiled. "Easy. Very easy. The squad slowly approached. One soldier activated a translation device. The machine produced broken English. Human, do not move. The old hunter looked up. He blinked, then blinked again. The alien soldiers waited. The hunter scratched his beard. For several seconds, nobody moved. Finally, the man spoke. You boys from California? The translation machine struggled. The aliens exchanged confused looks. What was California? The squad leader repeated the command. Human, surrender. The hunter stared at them. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. The aliens had never seen that reaction before. Most species panic during first contact. This human looked amused. Then everything became worse. The old hunter suddenly turned and sprinted into the forest. Capture him, shouted the squad leader. The aliens charged after him. Within seconds, they vanished among the trees. 5 minutes later, the patrol reported back. The human had disappeared. Completely. No tracks. No heat signature. No evidence. Nothing. The alien commander received the report and frowned. One unarmed civilian escaped 6 trained soldiers? Yes, Commander. Zorvok was not pleased. Meanwhile, similar events happened across the state. Alien patrols continued searching for humans. Humans continued disappearing. Hunters knew the forest better than any map. They knew hidden trails, secret valleys, abandoned cabins, small caves, places no scanner could easily detect. Every time aliens got close, the humans vanished. By afternoon, the situation became even stranger. A squad of 12 alien soldiers entered a heavily wooded area. They never returned. Search teams found only empty footprints. No bodies. No weapons. Nothing. The disappearance confused everyone. Commander Zorvok immediately demanded answers. What happened to them? No one knew. Hours later, another patrol disappeared. Then another. The reports piled up. The aliens were losing troops. Not in battles. Not in firefights. Simply disappearing. For the first time, concern appeared inside the invasion fleet. Back on Earth, hunters gathered in small groups. Most still had no idea what was happening, but they understood one thing. The creatures from the sky were dangerous. An old hunting cabin. Nearly 20 hunters crowded inside. The room smelled of coffee and wet jackets. Ethan stood near a window. Everyone was talking at once. What are those things? Government experiment? No chance. Maybe China? China doesn't have flying cities. The room fell silent. Nobody could explain what they had seen. Finally, an older hunter named Jack spoke. Jack had hunted Wyoming mountains for over 40 years. People respected him. If they came from that ship, Jack said slowly, then they ain't human. The room became quiet again. Nobody wanted to say the word. Alien. It sounded ridiculous. Impossible. Yet every person there had seen the giant ship. Nobody could deny reality anymore. Ethan crossed his arms. What do we do? Jack looked around the room. We survive. Everyone nodded. Simple, clear, practical. Nobody talked about heroics. Nobody talked about saving Earth. They simply wanted to protect their families. Outside, the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains. Darkness spread across Wyoming, and with darkness came fear. The alien forces continued expanding. Bright lights moved through the forests. Dropships crossed the sky. The invasion grew larger. But something else was happening too. The hunters were watching. From hills, from ridges, from forests, thousands of eyes followed every alien movement, every landing site, every patrol route, every machine. The aliens did not realize it yet, but they were becoming hunted. Late that night, Commander Zorvok reviewed the latest numbers. The report shocked him. 38 missing soldiers, 7 missing drones, 3 missing patrol vehicles, no confirmed enemy attacks, no battle damage, no explanation. The commander stared at the screen. Impossible. One of his officers swallowed nervously. Commander, perhaps these humans are more capable than expected. Zorvok slammed his hand against the console. Nonsense. The officer immediately stepped back. But deep down, Zorvok felt uncertainty growing. Something about this planet felt wrong. Everything should have been easy, yet every hour brought new problems. Then an alarm suddenly echoed through the command center. A communications officer jumped from his seat. "Commander, what is it?" "We lost contact with another patrol." The room froze. "Location?" Zorvok demanded. The officer checked the display. His eyes widened. The patrol disappeared less than 2 miles from the main landing zone. Silence filled the room. The main landing zone was heavily guarded. Nothing should have happened there. Yet another squad had vanished. Commander Zorvok slowly looked toward the giant planet displayed on the screen. For the first time since arriving in the Sol system, he felt something he rarely experienced: doubt. Outside, snow continued falling across Wyoming. The forest grew darker. The mountains became silent. And hidden among those mountains, thousands of hunters prepared for a very long night. The aliens believed they were tracking primitive prey. They believed Wyoming was weak. They believed humans would panic and surrender. They had made a terrible mistake, because hunting season had just begun. And in Wyoming, the hunters knew exactly how to deal with creatures that wandered into the wrong territory. The first night of the invasion was supposed to be easy. At least, that was what Commander Zorvok had been told. The intelligence reports described humans as divided, emotional, and poorly organized. Their technology was centuries behind the galactic dominion. Their governments argued constantly. Their nations disagreed on almost everything. According to every prediction, Earth should have collapsed into panic within hours. Instead, something strange was happening. The humans were adapting. Fast. Very fast. Deep inside the snowy mountains of Wyoming, campfires glowed between hidden trees. Hunters gathered in small groups. Some had never met before. Others had hunted together for years. But now, everyone shared the same goal: stay alive, protect their families, and figure out what these creatures wanted. Ethan sat beside a fire near an abandoned ranger station. Around him were 8 other hunters. The group quietly studied a rough map spread across a wooden table. Every few minutes, someone added new information. Alien patrols spotted here. Another dropship landed near the river. Big machines moving through the northern valley. Nobody ordered them to do this. Nobody elected a leader. Yet information flowed naturally between groups. Within hours, hunters across hundreds of miles had created an unofficial network. Old radios, walkie-talkies, notes left at cabins, truck headlights used as signals. Simple methods, but effective, very effective. Meanwhile, the aliens continued struggling. At sunrise, a squad of alien scouts entered a forest near Jackson. Their mission was simple: map the area, locate civilians, return safely. They never returned. 3 hours later, a rescue team arrived. The forest looked normal. Fresh snow covered the ground. Nothing seemed unusual. Then one soldier noticed something. Tracks. The missing patrol's footprints entered the forest, but none came out. The trail simply ended. The aliens searched for hours. Nothing. No bodies. No equipment. No signs of battle. It was as if the entire patrol had vanished into thin air. The rescue team quickly reported back. Inside the mothership, Commander Zorvok listened with growing frustration. Another missing patrol. Another mystery. Another failure. The invasion was becoming embarrassing. "How many soldiers are missing now?" he asked. An officer checked the latest report. 73, Commander. The room became silent. 73 soldiers. Gone. Not killed. Not captured. Simply missing. That number should have been impossible. No primitive species could cause such confusion. Yet here they were, losing troops to civilians carrying hunting rifles. Zorvok's yellow eyes narrowed. Something wasn't right. These humans were behaving differently than expected. Far below, Ethan and his group discovered why. The answer was simple. Many hunters were not just hunters. One man had served in the Army Rangers. Another had spent 20 years as a police officer. One woman had been a military sniper. Another had survived 3 combat tours overseas. Wyoming's forests were filled with people who knew how to survive. People who understood tracking, ambushes, observation, patience. The aliens saw civilians. The reality was much more dangerous. That afternoon, Ethan joined a scouting group. They climbed a ridge overlooking an alien landing zone. Using binoculars, they watched dozens of alien machines unloading equipment. The sight was incredible. Hovering vehicles floated above the snow. Metal towers rose from the ground. Strange blue energy fields shimmered in the air. The technology looked impossible. Yet the aliens operating it seemed surprisingly ordinary. They made mistakes. They got distracted. They followed predictable patterns. Just like humans, Ethan lowered his binoculars. They're not gods. The others nodded. For the first time, hope appeared. The aliens had advanced technology, but they were not invincible. As the day continued, more humans arrived. Truck after truck reached hidden camps. Ranchers brought food. Mechanics repaired vehicles. Former soldiers shared tactical knowledge. Nobody waited for instructions from Washington. Nobody waited for permission. Communities organized themselves. The response was spontaneous, natural, human, and it terrified the aliens. Late that evening, an alien science team completed its first detailed study of humanity. The report was delivered directly to Commander Zorvok. At first, he barely paid attention. Then he started reading. His expression changed immediately. Human history was unlike anything the Dominion had expected. The report described endless conflicts, wars, revolutions, empires, civil wars, world wars. Humanity had spent thousands of years fighting itself. Even worse, humans had survived disasters that would have destroyed many advanced civilizations. Ice ages, famines, plagues, mass extinctions, economic collapses. Again and again, humans adapted. Again and again, they survived. The report's final conclusion disturbed him most. Humans possess unusually high adaptability under pressure. The alien scientist had highlighted the sentence several times. Zorvok stared at it. Adaptability. That was exactly what he was seeing. Every alien move produced a human response. Every new strategy created new resistance. The humans learned frighteningly fast. Suddenly, another officer rushed into the command center. "Commander, what now?" "We intercepted human communications." Zorvok looked interested. "Play them." The recording began. Several human voices filled the room. The aliens expected panic, fear, desperation. Instead, they heard something completely different. One voice said, "Anybody know how to stop a 40-foot robot?" Another replied, "Probably the same way we stop everything else." The recording ended. Silence filled the command center. One officer looked confused. "They're joking." Another officer nodded slowly. During an invasion, Zorvok felt uneasy. Most species panic when facing extinction. Humans made jokes. That was not normal. Nothing about these creatures was normal. As night returned to Wyoming, snow began falling again. Alien patrols moved carefully through the darkness. For the first time, they no longer felt confident. Every shadow looked dangerous. Every tree seemed suspicious. Every sound made them nervous. The hunters had become invisible ghosts, watching, waiting, learning. And somewhere deep within the forest, Ethan's group received unexpected news. A military convoy was approaching Wyoming. The United States government had finally reacted. National Guard units were mobilizing. Army forces were moving west. Air Force aircraft were preparing for deployment. The real military was coming. The hunters exchanged nervous looks. For 2 days they had been fighting alone. Now everything was about to change. But none of them realized how important those first days had been. Because while governments were still trying to understand the invasion, ordinary hunters had already accomplished something remarkable. They had slowed an alien conquest. They had confused a superior enemy. And most importantly, they had taught the invaders a lesson. Humanity was not easy prey. The aliens had landed in Wyoming expecting frightened civilians. Instead, they had stumbled into a population filled with trackers, survivors, veterans, and stubborn people who refused to back down. Commander Zorvok still believed victory was possible. But for the first time since arriving on Earth, he began asking himself a question he never expected to ask. What if this invasion had started in the wrong place? And far above Wyoming, hidden inside the giant mothership, warning alarms suddenly activated. Long-range scanners had detected something new approaching the battlefield. Something fast, something powerful, and something very human. The alarms echoed to the alien mothership. Red warning lights flashed across the command center. Officers rushed between their stations. Commander Zorvok immediately stood. What is happening? A sensor officer looked up from his console. Multiple aircraft detected. Commander. Zorvok frowned. Alien. The officer shook his head. No. Human. The giant screen changed. Several fast-moving dots appeared from the east. More appeared behind them. Then dozens more. The number continued growing. Zorvok narrowed his glowing eyes. Military forces? Yes, Commander. The room became silent. For 3 days, the invaders had mostly encountered hunters, ranchers, and local civilians. Now Earth's organized military was finally arriving. Yet strangely, Zorvok felt less worried than before. At least soldiers were predictable. Soldiers followed orders. Soldiers followed rules. The hunters had been far more confusing. Far below, Wyoming was changing. Long military convoys rolled across highways. National Guard vehicles arrived from neighboring states. Helicopters crossed the skies. Temporary command centers appeared overnight. The world had finally realized the invasion was real. News footage flooded every television screen on Earth. Governments held emergency meetings. Stock markets crashed. People everywhere watched the giant alien ship hanging over Wyoming. Humanity had officially entered its first alien war. But something unusual happened. The military commanders quickly noticed that local hunters already knew more about the battlefield than anyone else. Maps covered with handwritten notes appeared. Patrol routes had been tracked. Landing zones were marked. Alien movements were recorded. The hunters had spent days gathering information. Information that now became priceless. At a temporary military base, Colonel David Ross studied one of those maps. The experienced officer shook his head in disbelief. Who made this? A soldier pointed toward a nearby tent. Hunters, sir. Ross looked again. The map was incredibly detailed. Every alien patrol, every sensor tower, every machine position, everything. It was better than military intelligence. Unbelievable, Ross muttered. Nearby, Ethan watched the military arrival with mixed emotions. Part of him felt relieved. Professional soldiers were finally here. Maybe now the aliens could be stopped. But another part of him worried. The military didn't know the mountains. They didn't understand Wyoming like the locals did. And the aliens were still adapting. Inside the mothership, Commander Zorvok received another report. This one came from the science division. The lead scientist looked nervous. That alone caught Zorvok's attention. Alien scientists rarely showed fear. What is it? The commander asked. The scientist hesitated, then activated a large display screen. Thousands of images appeared. Human battlefields, historical wars, ancient weapons, modern armies, destroyed cities. The scientist swallowed. We have completed our analysis of human history. Good. The scientist didn't look reassured. In our opinion, Earth was incorrectly classified. Zorvok frowned. Explain. The next image appeared. It showed a timeline stretching thousands of years. Conflict after conflict filled the screen. Wars, rebellions, invasions, civil conflicts, global wars. The commander stared silently. The scientist continued. Commander, most intelligent species experience long periods of peace after reaching industrial development. The screen changed. Human history remained almost entirely filled with conflict. We found no such pattern among humans. Another scientist spoke. Humans appear unusually resistant to violence. Zorvok crossed his arms. Every species fights. Not like this. The room became quiet. The scientists exchanged nervous looks. Finally, the lead researcher showed the final report. The conclusion glowed across the screen. Humans evolved on one of the most competitive worlds ever documented. Zorvok read the sentence twice. then 3 times. The scientists continued. Predators, disease, climate disasters, resource competition. Images flashed rapidly. Wolves, bears, storms, famines, wars. The list seemed endless. Humans have spent their entire existence adapting to threats. The commander remained silent. The evidence was difficult to ignore. Every challenge seemed to make humans stronger. Every crisis seemed to unite them. Every setback seemed temporary. Suddenly, another officer entered the room. His face looked pale. That immediately worried everyone. What happened? Zorvok demanded. The officer activated another screen. The image showed a captured human database, military records, population statistics, weapons inventories. The officer pointed toward one number. There are over 300 million humans in this nation alone. Several alien officers stared. The number was enormous. Then the officer highlighted another figure. Human gun ownership. The room became silent, very silent. One scientist blinked, then blinked again. That number can't be correct. The officer checked twice. It is... More silence. Finally, one nervous officer spoke. The hunters we've been fighting? Yes. They're not soldiers. No. The officer swallowed. And many of them own military-grade equipment? Correct. The room felt colder. For days, the Dominion had been struggling against civilians. Not Earth's military. Not its professional armies. Just civilians. Commander Zorvok suddenly understood something horrifying. The invasion had barely started, and yet they were already facing problems. What would happen when humanity's full military power arrived? The answer worried him. Back on Earth, military planners were reaching similar conclusions. At headquarters, Colonel Ross listened to reports from the front. Alien technology was superior, far superior, but the invaders had weaknesses. They relied heavily on sensors. They preferred open terrain. They struggled with unpredictable tactics. Most importantly, they underestimated humans. That mistake could be exploited. Ross looked around the command room. We don't need to beat them at their strengths. Several officers nodded. We make them fight our way. The plan immediately began forming, and across Wyoming, hunters volunteered to help, not because anyone forced them, not because they were ordered, because it was their home. The alien invasion had landed in their mountains. That made it personal, very personal. Late that night, Ethan sat outside a temporary camp. Snow drifted gently through the air. The mountains stood silent beneath the stars. For a brief moment, everything felt peaceful again. Then he noticed something, a bright light moving high above. At first, he assumed it was another alien ship. Then he realized it was different, much larger, much brighter, and moving far faster. Within minutes, military radar stations across Wyoming detected it too. Alarms activated. Operators rushed to their screens. The object was entering Earth's atmosphere. Fast, extremely fast. Inside the alien mothership, warning systems screamed. Commander Zorvok looked toward the sensor display. His blood ran cold. The incoming vessel wasn't human, and it wasn't part of his fleet. One officer stared at the readings. Commander, what is it? The officer looked terrified. The answer came quietly. It's a Dominion warship. The room froze. Zorvok's eyes widened. That made no sense. No reinforcements had been requested. No additional fleet had been scheduled. Then a transmission arrived. The symbol on the message made every officer stand immediately. It belonged to the highest military authority in the Dominion. Only one type of person used that symbol, an Imperial Overseer. And Imperial Overseers only appeared when commanders were failing. As a giant warship descended toward Wyoming, Commander Zorvok realized something terrible. His superiors had lost confidence in him, and if the Overseer decided the invasion was failing, the humans would not be the only ones in danger. The massive warship entered Earth's atmosphere like a second moon. People across Wyoming looked up and saw a bright streak crossing the night sky. For a few moments, nobody spoke. The object was enormous, much larger than the mothership already hovering above the mountains. Its glowing engines lit the clouds with blue fire. Inside the alien mothership, Commander Zorvok stood frozen. The symbol on the incoming vessel was unmistakable. The Imperial Overseer had arrived, and that was bad news. Very bad news. Imperial Overseers were not diplomats. They were not advisors. They existed for one reason: to ensure victory. No matter the cost. The command center doors suddenly opened. Every officer immediately stood at attention. A tall figure entered. His armor was black instead of gray. Silver markings covered his chest. His eyes glowed deep red. Overseer Zaltor had arrived. The room fell completely silent. Zaltor slowly examined every officer before looking directly at Zorvok. "You have failed." The words hit like a hammer. No greeting. No introduction. Only judgment. Zorvok lowered his head. The humans were underestimated. The Overseer studied him for several seconds. Then he turned toward the giant battlefield display. Images from Wyoming filled the screen. Human resistance, destroyed patrols, missing soldiers, failed operations. Every mistake was visible. The Overseer's expression darkened. "You were given a primitive world." "Yes." "You were given superior technology." "Yes." "You were given orbital control." "Yes." The Overseer's eyes narrowed. "And yet hunters are defeating your army." Nobody dared speak. The silence fell heavy. Finally, Zaltor pointed toward Earth. "Enough." His voice echoed through the room. "Tomorrow we begin total conquest." Back on Earth, military commanders were preparing their own plans. Colonel Ross stood inside a crowded command center. Large screens displayed alien movements. Reports arrived every minute. The situation was changing quickly. The arrival of the second alien ship worried everyone. The invaders now had more troops, more aircraft, more machines. Humanity needed a victory, and fast. A young officer rushed toward Ross. "Sir, what is it?" "We've intercepted alien communications." Ross looked interested. "What did they say?" The officer handed him a tablet. Ross read silently. His face became serious, very serious. The aliens were planning a major attack, the largest attack so far. The objective was clear: capture central Wyoming, destroy organized resistance, break human morale. Ross immediately looked around the room. Get everyone ready. The final battle was coming. Meanwhile, Ethan and hundreds of hunters gathered near an old valley outside Jackson. Snow covered the ground. The cold wind howled between the mountains. Yet nobody complained. Men and women stood beside soldiers. Hunters beside Marines. Ranchers beside National Guard units. For the first time since the invasion began, everyone was united, not as states, not as political groups, not as strangers, as humans. The sight surprised many military officers. Most expected civilians to flee. Instead, they volunteered. Again and again, one young soldier watched hunters preparing equipment. "Why are they staying?" he asked. An older sergeant smiled. "Because this is home." The answer was simple and powerful. Far above, Overseer Zaltor watched the battlefield. His strategy was brutal. Thousands of troops would attack simultaneously. Heavy walkers would lead the advance. Aircraft would support them. The humans would be overwhelmed. At dawn, the invasion began. The sky filled with alien dropships. Hundreds descended through the clouds. The ground shook beneath enormous walkers. Blue energy weapons lit the snowy landscape. The attack spread across the mountains. The largest battle in human history had started. Ethan watched from a defensive position on a ridge. His stomach tightened. The alien force seemed endless. Machines marched through the valleys. Aircraft filled the skies. For a brief moment, fear returned. Then he heard something. A distant roar. Jets. Dozens of them. Everyone looked upward. American fighter aircraft appeared from the east. More arrived from the south. Then more from the north. The sky suddenly belonged to humanity. Missiles streaked through the clouds. Explosions erupted everywhere. Several alien dropships burst into flames. Cheers spread across human lines. The battle intensified. Alien walkers advanced through heavy fire. Human artillery responded. The mountains echoed with explosions. Snow and smoke filled the air. For hours, neither side gained advantage. Then something unexpected happened. The hunters started helping military commanders. Years of experience in the wilderness became valuable. They identified hidden routes, safe positions, natural choke points. Every mountain became a weapon. Every valley became a trap. The aliens slowly realized what was happening. Human forces weren't fighting randomly. They were using the terrain perfectly. The invaders had superior technology, but humans had something else: experience, adaptability, creativity. Again and again, alien assaults failed. By afternoon, Overseer Zaltor became furious. His attack was falling apart. Reports arrived nonstop. Lost walkers, destroyed aircraft, heavy casualties. The humans refused a break. Worse still, their morale seemed stronger than ever. The Overseer stared at the casualty numbers. Impossible. No species should fight like this. No species should keep resisting against overwhelming odds. Yet humans did. Again, and again, and again. As sunset approached, a massive explosion shook the battlefield. Human forces had destroyed one of the main alien command towers. Cheers erupted across radio channels. The victory was symbolic, but important. For the first time, the aliens were losing ground. Commander Zorvok quietly watched the reports. Deep inside, he already knew the truth. The invasion was failing. Not because alien technology was weak. Not because human technology was stronger. Because humanity itself was stronger than expected. Much stronger. As darkness covered Wyoming, both sides prepared for another. But something strange happened aboard the Overseer's warship. Long-range sensors detected an incoming signal. Not from Earth. Not from the invasion fleet. From deep space. Very deep space. The message carried the highest security classification in the Dominion. Only Imperial leaders could send it. The Overseer immediately opened the transmission. His confidence vanished. The room became silent. Several officers looked confused. One finally spoke. "Overseer?" Zaltor slowly lowered the screen. For the first time since arriving, fear appeared in his eyes. "What does it say?" asked Zorvok. The Overseer answered quietly. "The Empire has reviewed humanity's combat data." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then came the shocking conclusion. The Emperor has officially reclassified Earth. Zorvok felt cold. Reclassified as what? The Overseer's voice barely rose above a whisper. A death world. And subtly every alien in the room understood just how dangerous humanity. The word spread to the alien fleet within minutes. Death world. The term carried fear across the galaxy. Very few planets ever received that classification. Most intelligent species evolved on relatively safe worlds. Their environments were stable. Their predators were limited. Their climates were predictable. Earth was different. Earth was chaos. Inside Overseer Zaltor's command center, silence filled the room. Every officer stared at the report. The Emperor's message continued scrolling across the screen. Planet designation: Earth. Status: Death World Class 7. Threat assessment: severe. Recommendation: immediate strategic reevaluation. Commander Zorvok read the report several times. He finally understood why everything had gone wrong. The humans were not behaving strangely. The invasion planners had simply misunderstood them. Earth had created a species that survived impossible conditions, a species that adapted faster than expected, a species that became stronger during crises. The aliens had invaded a world that trained warriors by accident. Meanwhile, down on Earth, nobody knew about the new classification. The fighting continued. Snowstorms rolled across Wyoming. Explosions echoed through the mountains. Human and alien forces clashed day and night. But something had changed. The invaders were no longer advancing. They were retreating, slowly at first, then faster. Human commanders immediately noticed. At a military operations center, Colonel Ross studied satellite images. Alien positions were shrinking. Defensive lines were forming. The invaders were no longer acting like conquerors. They were acting like survivors. Ross looked around the room. Pressure them. The officers nodded. The order spread across Wyoming. Keep pushing. Keep advancing. Don't give the aliens time to recover. Human forces responded immediately. Army units moved forward. National Guard forces secured roads. Hunters guided troops through difficult terrain. Every day the aliens lost more territory. Every day human confidence grew. 3 days later, the final battle began. The battlefield was the same valley where the invasion had started. The giant mothership still hovered above the mountains. Alien defenses surrounded the area. Energy barriers protected command structures. Heavy walkers guarded every approach. The invaders intended to make their final stand. Thousands of humans gathered for the assault. Soldiers, pilots, Marines, hunters, police officers, volunteers, people from every background. For the first time in history, humanity fought a common enemy, and humanity was united. Ethan stood among the advancing forces. His rifle felt heavier than usual, not because of fear, because he finally understood what was happening. This wasn't just about Wyoming anymore. This was about Earth. The battle started before sunrise. Human artillery opened fire. The mountains shook. Hundreds of shells crashed into alien defenses. Explosions lit the darkness. Moments later, aircraft appeared overhead. Missiles streaked through the clouds. Several alien shield generators exploded. Huge gaps opened in the defensive lines. Human forces charged forward. The fighting became intense. Alien walkers fired energy beams. Human tanks returned fire. Jets battled dropships overhead. Smoke covered the valley. The noise was deafening. Yet the advance continued. Hour after hour, step by step, the humans moved closer. Inside the command center, Overseer Zaltor watched everything collapse. His superior technology no longer mattered. The humans adapted to every tactic, every surprise, every weapon. The Death World report had been correct. Humanity was dangerous, not because of its machines, because of its people. By midday, human forces reached the main command complex. Alien defenses crumbled. Communication towers fell. Power systems failed. Panic spread through the invasion fleet. For the first time, alien soldiers began surrendering. Commander Zorvok watched the battlefield quietly. He knew it was over. The invasion had failed. Earth had won. A few hours later, the command center doors exploded inward. Human soldiers rushed inside. Weapons aimed. Orders shouted. The final defender surrendered immediately. Overseer Zaltor attempted to escape. He never made it far. Within minutes, both alien leaders were captured. The battle was over. The first alien invasion of Earth had ended. Outside, thousands of humans celebrated. Cheers echoed through the mountains. People hugged, laughed, cried. Against impossible odds, humanity had survived. Again, a week later, peace negotiations began. The surviving alien fleet remained in orbit. Human governments met with alien representatives. For the first time, official first contact took place. The meeting attracted global attention. Billions watched. Commander Zorvok sat across from human leaders. He looked very different now. Tired, defeated, older somehow. One question had been bothering him since the invasion ended. Finally, he asked it. Why? The room became quiet. A human representative looked at him. Why what? Zorvok lowered his eyes. When you captured us, why didn't you execute us? The answer came from Colonel Ross. Because the war was over. The alien commander frowned. Many species would seek revenge. Ross nodded. Maybe. Then why show mercy? The colonel smiled slightly. Because we're trying to build a future, not destroy one. The answer surprised many aliens. They had expected hatred, anger, punishment. Instead, they found something unexpected. Compassion. It confused them more than the fighting ever had. Months passed. The damaged alien fleet finally prepared to leave Earth. Peace agreements were signed. Trade discussions began. Scientific exchanges followed. Humanity officially joined the galactic community. And across the galaxy, a new lesson entered military academies. Cadets studied the Battle of Wyoming. They learned how an invasion force had underestimated humanity, how hunters delayed an alien army, how ordinary people changed history. The lesson always ended with the same warning: never invade a death world, and never underestimate humans. As the last alien ships departed, Commander Zorvok stood aboard a transport vessel. He watched Earth slowly shrink behind him. Part of him felt relief. Part felt respect. Then an alarm suddenly activated. The bridge crew became nervous. A sensor officer rushed toward him. "Commander, what is it?" The officer pointed toward a screen. Several enormous objects had appeared beyond the solar system. The readings were unlike anything in Dominion records. The ships were gigantic, far larger than the invasion fleet, far larger than anything humanity had seen. Zorvok felt cold. "Identify them." The officer's hands trembled. "I can't." Another officer looked at the data. His face turned pale. "They aren't Dominion." Silence filled the bridge. The mysterious fleet continued moving toward Earth, slowly, purposefully, like predators approaching prey. Then a single transmission appeared. The message contained only one sentence: "Humanity has been noticed." And as Earth celebrated its first victory among the stars, something far older and far more powerful had just turned its attention toward the human race.